For this tutorial, I'm going to be introducing triggers. And to start with, we're going to actually make a quick and simple game here. Now here I sort of made a quick spawn system using the code from last time, so I have two modules here. Ignore this for now. And here I have a globals. I made the unit group private. And then this code looks pretty familiar. It was the first of group iteration. And over here I'm using two variables that we don't see anywhere in here. So here I have a barracks. Oh, there are the two variables. There's the barracks unit type ID and the timeout. And that's where the unit's created. Let's look back here where the code's being made. Code's being made right there, isn't it? And then here's the castle. So that's creating two units. If we look at the map, I start with 3 castles, and blue starts with 3 barracks, each with 10% health. And this is just to make the game go by very quickly. So to start with, we're going to need some sort of event to say when the game should end. And how about we begin by counting how many bases each of us has, so how many castles I have and how many barracks blue has. That way when all of them are gone, blue loses or I lose. In fact, we don't even have to count them. We can create what's called an event. So whenever a unit dies, how about a building dies? Then we go through all the buildings of the base, so let's say castles and barracks, and see if there are any left. And if there are none left, that player loses. And we're going to do what's called registering an event to a trigger here. Triggers, very familiar in GUI, right there. There are your events. These are all registered to the trigger. Here are the conditions. These are added to the trigger. And here are the actions. These are also added to the trigger. So a trigger is a list of events registered to them, conditions. Well, really, actually, the trigger is registered to the event, so every event has a list of triggers that are registered to it. So here are the events the trigger is registered to, the conditions that were added to the trigger, and the actions that were added to the trigger. So a trigger sort of has a list of conditions and a list of actions. To start with here, we're just going to be focusing on the events and one condition and one action. Later on, we'll be making triggers from scratch. So to register an event, we'll use the triggered register something event. So here are a whole list of events, and let's go to the function list to see them more clearly. Uh-oh. Appears that my function list died. Okay, here we go. So, trigger register... Oh, that's probably what we want, death event. But notice this takes a specific widget. A unit is a type of widget, so is an item. So we probably don't want that since it's a very specific unit that has to die. We want a unit type ID, or just a general death event. So let's look under the constants to see if there's something there we can use. Game events are general game events when anything happens of that type. So here's like leave region, enter region. So any region that's left or entered will fire that event. But it does not appear that the game event we want is here. So we're probably going to have to do a unit type event or something along those lines. So if we go through here, we have a player event and then a player unit event. So this is what we want right there. This happens whenever a unit owned by a player has something happen to it. So here's the trigger that's going to be registered to the event, the player to register the trigger for, the actual unit event, which is a constant over here, and then a filter, which we can just set to null. So if we go to constants, we can see what kind of unit events there are. We go event, player, unit, and there are all the events. So we have attacked, change owner, and so on. We probably want death. Right there is death. So event, player, unit, death. So let's go ahead and write this out. Call trigger register player unit event, and then it's trig. If we look up in the core, right here, private trigger trig. So we're registering to that trigger. So trig. Then the unit. So first we're going to do player red. Then event player unit death, and then null. And then let's go ahead and do it again for player blue. And normally what we would use is a loop here. So we go local integer I equal to 15 loop and loop. So I equal I minus 1, exit when I equals 0, and then we go register the event for player I. And this would register it for all players, 0 through 15. Since there are only 2 of us, we're just going to have it start at 1. And we'll go ahead and save that, and now this is ready to go, but right now it's not doing anything. In vjass, actions are rarely, if ever, used. Actions are only really useful for one thing, but they run much slower than conditions. So what we're going to do here is start using conditions and not actions. Now, what we want to do is check if the game's over. So here we have 2 base types. Oh, let's close this. We have castles and barracks. So whenever one of these 2 types of unit dies, we're going to enumerate over all the castles and barracks to see if there are any left. So how about we first do a check here. We'll first get the event unit, so local unit u equal get trigger unit. And then let's set that to null for later. And now how about get unit type, or rather is unit type u unit type structure, I believe it is. So this will just check if it's a building, because if you see, these are the only buildings on the map, so this will work perfectly. We could check it against the castle unit type ID or the barracks unit type ID, but that's kind of pointless. So let's just do this instead. Then call group enum units of type, and we probably want a group here. Let's make one up in variables. So private group unit group equal create group. So call group enum units of type unit group, unit ID to string, hbar null. And then we probably want a little boolean here. Local boolean has player lost equal false. So we'll set has player lost equal first of group unit group not, or rather equal null. And then call group clear, or rather we don't even have to do a group clear here. And group clear, by the way, clears out the unit group. What we can do is enumerate again. And really we should be enumerating units of type of player, and then going through and finding the specific type. So let's get rid of this and do get trigger player. That's the player that had the unit die. And now let's just go through and do a count. So we'll do local integer count, and we'll do a first of group loop here. So loop and loop. Set u equal to first of group, or rather, yeah, let's do this. First of group, unit group, exit when u equal null. If u not equal get trigger unit, because we're not counting that one since it's already dead. Or rather, how about if get widget life u greater than 0, and is unit type u unit type structure, then set count equal count plus 1. And I probably need to initialize count right here. after this, set has player lost equal to count equals 0. If has player lost, then end if, call end game false. And that will end the game right there. Or we could do call print get player name, get trigger player plus has lost. And then we could even go and enumerate over all the units and remove them all. So loop and loop. Set u equal first of group, unit group, exit when u equal null, call, probably want to do a call group remove unit up here. Group remove unit group u, call group remove unit, unit group u, and then call remove unit u. And then we don't even have to actually, well, yeah, we do. We do have to set that to null because of this right there. So what this will end up doing is when the player loses, all of their units will get removed. And how about we even give the winning player some gold? Call set player state, get owning player, get killing unit, player state, resource, gold, I believe, yep, that's it. Get player state, get owning player, get killing unit, player state, resource, gold, and we'll give them like 500, oh, plus 500. And let's move that out of the loop so they don't get it every single time. And then we'll even display a message here. Call print, or rather call display time text to player, get owning player, get killing unit, 0060. You have won. And we'll change this to display get trigger player, you have lost. So now, a full-blown game here. Whenever a unit dies, this condition will run. If that dead unit is a structure, it'll go through all the units owned by the owning player of the dead unit. And if the unit is alive and is unit type structure, it'll set this count equal count plus 1. So that's how many bases they have. Then they'll lose if they don't have any bases left, so if count is equal to 0. If they lost, we'll display a message here to the player, you have lost. And then we'll go over all their units and remove all of them. So remove unit U. Then here we'll give the winning player 500 gold, and we'll tell them that they've won. And let's go ahead and try that out now. So, here are the knights and riflemen that are spawning. I'm going to go ahead and sack me some bases. So you can probably see why I lowered these down to make this go faster. Oh wow, I'm spawning a lot here, aren't I? One left. You have won, and we got 500 gold. And they lost. Yay! So there's an introduction to triggers. Now there are many other events over here. All these events, and let's get rid of the BJ ones. So we have timer expiration event, timer event. So this creates like a timer for the trigger. Player event, and then there are lots of player events here. So event, player right here, arrow up, chat, etc. And then there are also tons of triggering things like get the event ID, get trigger player, trigger unit. There are other ones too, like get killing unit, get dying unit, get owning player, get trigger item, or get manipulated item. Then there's one for widgets. Get trigger widget. There are just lots and lots of different things for triggers. And really, it's best to mess around with them and see what you can make using this little setup. And later on, we'll make a trigger from scratch, adding our very own conditions and our very own actions. And we'll see how that works. And in fact, let's not even add our very own actions, because actions are relatively useless. This worked perfectly without actions, and as you saw, we had all of our conditions right in the code here. And these are, again, all dynamic functions, so if you add conditions up here and then do actions, that'll just make it run a whole lot slower. So I'll see you next time.